We want them to obey you. The Lord wants them to obey you. But what we really want is for them to learn to say yes to the ultimate authority, which is the creator of all humans.
Run your home and your dough like a biblical boss. We're recording this on April 11th. What starts tomorrow?
The final 2 rounds of the Masters.
Excellent answer. We would have also accepted
Passover.
Passover.
Sorry, I would have gotten that right, except that we're doing our Seder on the final final weekend.
Okay.
Just that kind of gives us Good Friday to Seder to Easter.
Understood. That's fine.
But go ahead. I'm excited to hear what you're going to say.
We're in the position of many modern Christians where we straddle the line of like, we're going to do a little Seder with our crew here. And then you kind of do the Easter thing with the extended family, because that's what they're used to, right? So we're going to be doing both of those things. But yes, so our Passover Seder is going to be in a day. And just to explain that very quickly, that might be very confusing for someone to hear. Wait, are you guys Jewish? Not Jewish. My family's from pagan Spain. I'm not trying to become Jewish. I'm not on a training program where I end up Jewish in 20 years. What we believe, follow this crazy logic, we believe that the way that God laid out a calendar year was probably intentional. And because he wanted to train his multi-gen family, God's multi-gen family, which what he did is he adopted Abraham's multi-gen family. He wanted to train that family in his story. And so God's intention was that we're going to repeatedly tell the family story over and over. And if we do it in these seasons of the year, my family, says God, will be well and truly baptized in my story, and we'll remember it over and over. So we as believers, we've done a very strange thing, and we will talk about this tomorrow night around my table. We've done a very strange thing, which is to completely trash all of our faith history, and we've completely punted on all of God's calendar that he prescribes in Scripture. And we thought, let's start with the Catholics in the Middle Ages and see if we can come up with something else. And what we're finding, you and I and the people that we run with, is that there is still magnificent meat on that bone of going back to the biblical stories. So you might not be a person with, I want to follow the whole Jewish calendar. Okay, that's fine. But we would say that the high point of the calendar year is the Passover. So to us, it's kind of a place to start with, how can we celebrate this high holy day, So that's what we do. We've learned from Jewish people how to do a kind of a Seder, follow a bit of a Haggadah. This is the process they go through. Well, and we've learned this from Messianic Jews, that those are born again Jews, who are kind of going, how can we tell the story of Jesus as we're going through this thing? So it's a home-based spiritual ceremony, which I like that. You already have my attention. Okay, that's the lay of the land. Anything else you want to say about just the fact that we do this thing and explaining
two
that?
things. One, I have good news. We came to Hebrews 2 in our family pre-dinner Bible reading last night.
Chewy.
And it says the ones that Jesus came to help were not the angels. They were the children of Abraham, and his work of salvation was for the children of Abraham. Well, guess what? I think his work of salvation was helpful to me, so I'm claiming the status. And I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, I tweeted something about Passover, and some, I guess, famous like Jezebel progressive Christianity lady retweeted me and said, this is an example of, cultural appropriation, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, It's my culture. It's my culture. I am a child of Abraham.
Exactly right.
By the blood of Jesus. So I get to do that. And this year we're doing, like I said, we're doing ours a little later, but I went a different route this year with the Passover. Seder, and I told my wife, we are in a very unique time in our family history where we don't have little kids. We have a lot of baby cousins in the family.
Right.
They live down the street, so they're over here all the time. And last year we did small child Passover, and we invited some friends that had little kids. And Lord willing, we're gonna have little babies in the family in not all that long. I have 3 daughters that are growing quickly. I'm like, we're gonna go back to baby Passover here in 10
It's
years.
true.
But we're in a window where I have children that can, because they've been trained, they can enjoy and sit through a 3 or 4-hour meal.
Yeah.
My wife at church was like, "Oh, you should join us," to a family that had these 3 little kids, and I said,
No.
You can join us, and just know that your boys are gonna need to be able to sit still for 4 hours." And they're like, "Oh, maybe we could just, like, come for the first hour." I said, "You're not invited if that's what you want. Like, I don't want you to come. I'm sorry." And so we're actually having some younger childless folks who are newlyweds, a
Neat.
couple different couples join us, but I'm excited because this year we're going. I'm sure we'll do a little kid one soon when we bring the cousins over, but this year we're going like long and full depth. So I'm
Great.
looking forward to it.
You're going to go full send, would you say?
You could, if you wanted to use the language of Larry and Tyser and say, we're going to send it
Yeah.
this Passover,
Yeah.
I think it'd be appropriate because
Right.
we're going full send for,
Right. So you could say we're surrounded by little cousins, but we're still going to send it.
yeah, the
Okay.
Sash will not stop.
Excellent. Well, okay. On that note, I got to contextualize this. One thing that we have learned from our friend John Myers is the relationship that the modern evangelical believer has with Israel and modern Jews specifically. And so one thing that he calls out is the Romans assignment, I suppose, of the modern Christian, which is we're supposed to be living in such a way that the Jewish people, the DNA family of God, if you will, become jealous at what we're doing. So, for instance, if you do Christmas and Easter, that's fine. I understand those celebrations. I don't think you're going to make a lot of Jews jealous with those because they think of those as Christian things. If you are a Christian who celebrates Passover, I know from experience there'll be Jews raising eyebrows, and you might come across them from time to time. And then you should be ready, as Peter says, to defend your faith and give an explanation for the hope that you have. Okay, cut to today. John Myers introduced me to this guy. I don't think he's going to listen to this, so I'm just going to tell you about him. There's a guy who is kind of like a mayor of his little arena, and everybody calls him Uncle Joe. He is a Jew by DNA. I believe he wears a kippah and a prayer shawl with all the time. It's almost like wearing a monocle and carrying a walking stick just because it's an interesting prop. And I think it lets him have conversations. He does not have faith. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know anything about being a Jew. He says about himself, if I have to claim a religion, it's probably Irish pagan. And he doesn't say that jokingly. He means like observing pagan practices. Like this is a guy who's off the reservation. Okay, he doesn't have any sort of faith background. Doesn't know anything. But he has come into our friend John Myers' world, and he went through the Israel story, and apparently, light bulbs went off for him right and left, so that he's one of these people who would now say, I think that I believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, and I don't personally believe, and I don't know anything yet, and I have a tiny bit of like faith because I believe that he is who he says he is. I haven't put my trust in him, or however that works. I'm just learning. And it's okay. Let's go back to Romans. If we have this assignment, which is somewhere along the way, we're going to be introducing Jewish people to the one that they have rejected. The Bible says there's a veil over their eyes. If we're living out the story that they were supposed to live out, and they kind of look over the fence and see us, hey, what are you doing over there? Oh, it's Passover. Well, what that's not yours, that's ours. No, actually, as you just said, Mark, we are adopted into your family. Sorry to, surprise you, but we're actually doing your family traditions. And then they go, what's going on? I don't know. That's going to happen. It's going to happen because the scriptures say it's going to happen. When does it happen? Is it going to happen to you if you don't know any Jews around you? I don't know when or how it's going to happen. But what happened today was I started into a text conversation with Uncle Joe, and ... I invite him to the Passover, and ... Uncle Joe's coming to my table. He's going to come to Passover. He's like, I don't even have a suit. So can I come? I was like, bro, it doesn't matter what you wear. This is going to be love and remembrance. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I don't know anything about this stuff. Like, man, you're going to be with the right crowd. We're going to love your questions. And I'm humming. I'm like on the verge of tears thinking about this is going to be one of those moments. Like we're going to do the scriptural thing. It's going to happen in my house tomorrow night, where this guy is going to get a taste and he's going to get a scent of, this is actually my family heritage. What have I been missing here? What's going on? I'm just buzzing.
Sounds like it. This is exciting. You get excited anytime you run across a Jew of any type, but when we're dealing with one who's interested in the Messiah, that's a pretty rare thing I've found.
Yeah.
Sadly, not forever. We know that the Lord's going to bring everyone He planned to into the fold, but I'm gonna say you're gonna have to give a follow-up report to the Abraham's Walk.
Great. I hope so.
Maybe someday this guy will come on and tell us what it looked like to be on the other side of the whole
that would be amazing also
by the Christ worshipers.
Let me throw this out to people. I've often had this thought. I'm not sure how eternity works, but I do know this, that God can fold time very easily. He loved us before the foundation of the world. He chose me. Did I exist before the foundation of the world? I did in His heart and His mind. You know what? If you're listening to this right now, my Passover has already happened in time. But if you wanted to hear this and you wanted to pray for Uncle Joe, that his heart would be open, that the Lord might move on him, that his eyes would be open and the veil be removed, maybe even at our Passover table while we're eating the delicious lamb of God. Why not? God can retroactively make prayers work. Well, boy, we've lost a lot of time here. Let's get to the promised topic that people clicked on. We're talking about how to get a surefire, well-behaved child, and I've got three ways to do that. The first, pardon?
Spank him? Is that one of them?
Well, that is insufficient. Alone, it might be a good component of a plan.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Okay, so what's the secret to raising well-behaved kids? Here's my first thing, and by the way, you do want well-behaved kids, as we're going to get to. My first thing is that I want you to be properly motivated. I really, this is what I want you to get out of our time today. I want you to be properly motivated to have well-behaved kids. Now, there is a school of philosophy that would say simply having kids who are pleasant to be around is its own reward, and you don't have to be guilty for feeling selfishly, well, I want them to be easier to deal with. They should be easy to deal with. I think they should be a blessing to you. And I remember Jordan Peterson had a comment, which was, make your kids people that you want to spend time around. And if you find your kid annoying and I can't make him put that machine down, and he doesn't ever listen to what I say, and all they do is frustrate you, you might not have done a great job. There might be some course correction necessary. Okay. But when I say I want you to be properly motivated, let me give you an example of what we're talking about here. I believe that your children are your mission. So, whatever you feel called to do in your lifetime, I mean, whatever your spiritual gifts and you think you have a ministry, that's great. Execute those things, do it. I've got a calling to grow my business. Great. I've got some guys I'm spending time with and I want to grow and I want them to grow. That's all great. Great, great, great. And if you don't train your children properly, they will torpedo everything that you were ever meant to do with your life. I think it's that drastic. So we've said this before, but what we can prove biblically is that when God looks at you, he doesn't necessarily just look at an individual. So you get a scorecard based on were you a good person? Were you a good boy? Were you loving? Did you act right? Did you follow the 10 commandments? Okay, A plus. I don't think that's how it works. I think he looks at us as as stages in a river, and he goes, "You inherited all of this, and God knows all of it even better than you do. He knows what was on your previous generations, what came down to you, and what you have to work with." I don't think he grades on a curve. I think he grades based on what you came from. He knows what you had to work with, and some people had a much higher leg up than other people. He knows all that, and so here you are at this stage in your family's journey, and he's going to look at what happens after your lifetime is done. What happens with your children and your children's children, everybody that's on your downline. And he looks at, well, what did you do with the time that you were given, opportunities you were given? So, yes, I want you to make the most of your time in your life. And I think that having kids that aren't trained, and when I say trained, I mean everything. I mean trained spiritually, how to hear God's voice. I mean trained intellectually. I mean their behavior, their physical habits, you name it. If they're not trained, then whatever good you thought your life produced, it gets chopped off probably before you breathe your last, and things start getting undone. There's biblical characters like Eli in the Bible. He seems like he was a great guy who was a priest in the temple. He shepherded Samuel, did a great job. But you know what? He royally ripped at, he stunk up the joint, fathering. And whatever godly influence he had, that ended, I guess, with Samuel. It was like the last good kid that he made, because his sons were terrible and his line ended. And God referred to him many, many, many years later, just going like, that guy was a ding dong. And I don't esteem his life. His life was a mess. So I got to make that point up front. I want you to be properly motivated. I want to give a couple of specific examples of this after I let you talk.
I'm holding it in for now. I feel like
Okay.
keep
All right.
trucking, and I'm gonna. Don't worry, I've got some hot sports opinions.
Okay. Mark, are you aware of the study that was made in the late 1800s by A.E. Winship when he traced 150 years worth of the descendants of Jonathan Edwards?
Nope.
Okay. You might know the name Jonathan Edwards if you've ever been to the Bible Museum in Washington, D.C., which I encourage you to do. It's awesome. There's an area that talks about the Great Reformation, and there's actually like a pulpit, like the traveling pulpit. They could kind of like fold up a pulpit, kind of like a folding ladder, and carry it with them, and then shunk, they can throw it up. And Jonathan Edwards was like a leading voice in the American Reformation. In the late 1800s, this guy traced 150 years worth of Jonathan Edwards descendants. That's about 1,400 people. And what he wanted to illustrate was the impact of a godly legacy of Jonathan Edwards' life. Now, Jonathan Edwards, he was a great guy in his time. He was a preacher, and he was faithful to the word, and he was provocative, and he led a bunch of souls to the Lord.
You know what else he was?
What?
The president of Princeton University, my alma mater.
Hallelujah.
He was elected just after the previous president, Aaron Burr, died.
Okay. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways,
Well, that kind of leadership mantle was clearly on Jonathan Edwards, and he passed it on to his family. So when this dude traced 150 years of his 1,400 descendants, he did pretty good there. He had 11 kids, by the way. Here's what he found. Ready? 13 college presidents on his downline, 65 college professors, 100 lawyers, 30 judges, 60 physicians, 75 military officers, 100 preachers and missionaries. Now, let me just say 100 preachers and missionaries. There was far, I'm busting out the DBs here. There was far more fruit from Jonathan Edwards' downline than he possibly could ever have had in his lifetime. I'm not done with my list. I just want you to see one really good preacher compared to 100 preachers on his downline. Not done with my list. 100 preachers, 60 authors of prominence, 3 U.S. senators, 1 U.S. vice president. Guess who that was, Mark? It was Aaron Burr Jr. on his downline, and there must have been some intermarriage there, and 80 public officials, including governors and mayors.
wait, Aaron Burr Sr. was the one that was president of Princeton and killed, and I think
know.
he was Edwards's father-in-law, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's amazing. Anyways, Aaron Burr Jr., who was on Edwards' downline, was a U.S. vice president.
I'm wrong. It's his son-in-law. So yeah, that now makes sense. There wasn't
Okay.
intermarriage. It was he took the place of his son-in-law.
All right. So my point is that Jonathan Edwards did not neglect his own responsibilities as far as ministry and vocation went, but he did not neglect his family to do those things. He prioritized his family, obviously, and I'll say again, had much more fruit on his downline than he could possibly have had as one person in his lifetime.
That's great. He could have done nothing ever that would have
Right.
made us know his name, and the downline is a massively larger effect.
Great point. So by contrast, I've mentioned William Carey before. I wonder if I'm going to have to go apologize to William Carey when we meet in heaven. But he's an easy whipping boy on this point. I found out just something interesting about William Carey, which is he had 4 boys. And when they were 4, 7, 12, and 15 years old, a colleague of his, Joshua Marshman, said about these boys, they're unmannered, undisciplined, and uneducated. And so clearly for a man like William Carey, the gospel came first, which is what I do publicly as a minister, what I do in my vocation comes first, and my family is going to have to suffer because of my mission. There's a megachurch pastor who is famous for saying submission means that whatever you have comes sub to the mission. And of course, in that mindset, the mission would be the church. So your whole life comes after the church. And we've mentioned A.W. Tozer before. His wife, famously, she got married after he died. I don't remember the name of her new husband. Let's say his name was, I think it might have been Lamar. Let's say it was. She was quoted as saying, A.W. Tozer really did love Jesus Christ. Lamar loves me. It's like, oh, snap. So just a grating thought. And I was going to use the example of David Livingstone as well, whose family really, really, really suffered in poverty without him for much of their lives, because he is the much ballyhooed missionary explorer of Africa. That's why we know his name. We think of him as a hero. Okay, in some ways he was a hero. He lost at home. And I think in the final estimation, that's something that you and I need to wrestle with right now, which is, am I ever prioritizing the things that I think I need to do over my generations? And if you don't prioritize your children and the training of them, you lose in the long run. So that's my first point, is that you got to be properly motivated if you want to have well-behaved kids.
Agreed. I read a book called Out of Africa that was on one of our book reviews that we do every year that was all about Livingston. And let's just say he wasn't purely sharing the gospel when he was traipsing around Africa. He was also sharing Livingston genetics with several women
Oh,
who lived in Africa.
he was
So
sharing body parts as
maybe not quite as devoted to Christ as maybe some people would think based on
oh.
his story. But continue.
He was doing other kinds of evangelism also.
If in a way.
Okay. Um, I also just have to throw in here, people who've listened to us for a while will think of this as a broken record, which makes me very happy. But if you lose at home, you actually lose the right to have influence anywhere outside of your home, scripturally speaking. You are unqualified to lead any biblical spiritual thing if you lose at home. So that sounds horrible. All right. Number 2, use the right tools. I know that you have some personal passion around this, but for instance, pleading with your children, probably not a great tool. Treating your child like an equal, not a great tool. They're not an equal of yours. You would only make a kid arrogant if you acted like they were an equal of yours. You're the parent, they're not your equal. Do you want to talk more about terrible tools before I give some good ones?
I'll just say, and we don't have to go, we could do a whole episode on terrible tools. I'm not going to
True.
harp too much, but you can almost like guarantee that if you just go on your little you're on a podcast right now, you're listening to a podcast
Yeah,
on
yeah, you're right.
YouTube, go to there and type best parenting techniques or whatever you want. And I can almost guarantee you that the things that are currently popular in this area or of how to produce well, like developed and adjusted children are probably 95% terrible tools. Because I walk around Home Depot and I see children running wild, which is not actually, I mean, kind of, I said this at the beginning when I was talking about it's not their fault that they're little putzes in golf. Um, I think that parents have bought into these systems that are popular right now, like the gentle parenting movement, which means I'm going to sit there in a public space and plead with my child to to please understand why I'm trying to enforce this rule, and we won't move on until they assent to whatever I'm trying to do. Things like that are just that's the way that's being taught as you're a good parent if you do these things. I have been in a group of men who took a whole weekend to get together and talk about how to become better fathers, where a supposed leader in church world like told me I was just totally out of line for saying that it's important to train your children. And yes, sometimes that could even include a spanking on the butt. So I just think, and again, these are not people who are just like we're trying to push against all the things that Stephen, you and I would say these are our goals. These are people who they really do, I believe, have the same goals, but they're using terrible tools because they have started with, well, what do the world's experts tell me are the right ways to raise a child? And you're about to give some tools, I think. I don't know because your note just says I'm going to give some tools, but I'm betting these tools might have roots in the scriptures. That's a better place for us to start when we're asking how do we train and develop a child's heart compared to what is the latest psychological trend parenting thing, because those are all not working.
Yeah. I feel like the designer of human beings would be a good person to go to ask, how should human beings be trained? If you are a parent and you've been given an assignment to train children, how do you know that you have the assignment? Because your wife got pregnant and gave birth to a child. That's how you know that you have the assignment to train that child. Also, the scripture tells you, train up the child. So if that is your assignment, then, for instance, as you say, Mark, a terrible tool would be, I want my child to be well behaved at a restaurant table, so I bribe them by handing them my phone, and the bribe is, if you will just shut up and get out of our face, we'll give you the video entertainment you crave. That's not training. That's a bad tool, and that bribe is going to follow you around into every other part of your life, and the expectation that if you want good behavior out of me, you will bribe me. That is not only problematic for the running of a peaceful home. That ain't going to work. It's really bad if you then extrapolate that and think, what is this child someday going to think about obeying God? Oh, I'll tell you what they're going to think. They're going to think, if you want me to obey you, God, I'm waiting for the bribe. What do you got for me? That's not a good recipe. As somebody who has some experience with God, I'll tell you that he does not dangle blessings out in front of us. Go, well, if you'd like to obey me, I could give you some goodies. Sometimes he points his long finger, holy finger in your face and says, I'm the king. You're insubordinate. Do what I say. And if this offends you on some level, you could repent. That'd be a great thing to do. And then we could just go, Lord, how do we obey you as well-behaved children? Would you teach us how to obey? So I want to train my children in a way that they will, without resentment. The Bible actually talks about that too. If you train in such a way where you're like mean to your kids, and they have a heart of resentment against you, you have violated your job scripturally. That's in the book of Ephesians, that we cannot be engendering bitterness in our children's hearts. So in a loving and fair way, we have to train them so that they obey us with a willing heart. And you're going to have to deal with the fact that you have sinners. And so God does that with you. And our goal is that when our children come of age, they start to deal with God the way that they've dealt with us as parents, and we've set them up for success so that they can go, well, I know who I am. I'm subordinate to you. You're my authority. Tell me the way you want me to go, and I'll walk in it.
When you bribe your kids, you are training them. I mean, this
Sure.
is like quintessential. You and I have both had a puppy. How do you teach a puppy to sit? You tell it to sit, and then you hand it a treat that tickles its like most basic part of its brain. Oh, yum, meat.
Yes.
Uh, that's what you're doing when you say to your kid, like, shut up, and then I will feed your dopamine system something that makes it go, oh, that felt good. And so you're training your kid, do things that make you feel good right now.
Right.
And that's not what we're going for. So
Not good.
tell us what training looks like when we're doing it for the long term.
Okay. Here come the tools. Number one, when we are training a child, like anything else, let's go to the puppy example. We're not we don't stare at a puppy and go, I wonder what he'll do. Let's just watch him for 3 weeks in our house. Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. He peed on the rug. Oh, man. I wonder what he's going to do next. Oh, he jumped up on the counter and ate all of our food and then pooped in the pot where the food is. That's just crazy. I wonder what else he'll do. We don't do that with puppies. We proactively start training them, and this is the way that I want you to behave. And then when they do that thing, even if they don't even know what they did, we praise them when they do the behavior that we want, and we give them disapproval when they don't behave the way that we want. And a puppy is much like an infant in the way that they're sensitive to their master's tone and facial expressions. I know that with my dog, all I have to do is lower my voice, lower my head, and maybe show my teeth. And he immediately goes, what did I do wrong? I'm so sorry. Or if I just do, it doesn't even matter what I say. If I go, do that, what do? the dog will just go like, everything's great, isn't it? Yeah, I've got your approval. Similarly with children, we tell them what we want before they can comprehend it intellectually. So we think that around 5 or 6 months, when a kid is sitting up and can control its body enough to sit up, that's a time to start training. Was that a little early? Yes, we're going to be first to market with our children's decision making, and we're going to help them make decisions that we want. So at that window of time, 5 to 6 months, we start with just teaching them no. That's a very important idea, that they would learn the word no. So it goes like this, Mark. You've heard this before and seen it and done it. Put a kid in a high chair. On the tray in front of them, you put a bauble. It might be keys, it might be a glass ball, something sparkly and interesting. And then right beside it, you put a less attractive, acceptable thing for them, a teething ring, a toy, something like that. You set it in front of them. You put your hand on the keys. You say, this is no. And you might even make it sound a little disapproving. This is no. And then go to the teething ring. This is yes. This is yes. This is no. This is yes. And then you pull back and stare at them and wait. And they are eventually going to crawl that. They're looking at you typically while they crawl that hand out and kind of go, is this right? And they grab the shiny thing. That's going to be what they tend to do. And you say, no, that's no. And you take it out of their hand and give them some sort of a physical tap, even a tap, a physical touch that goes, that's not what dad wants you to do. Just a tap, pull the thing back, then sit there I do the thing where you lower your voice. You might narrow your eyes a little bit. That's no. Now, they don't even know the content of what you're saying, perhaps, but they can read your face, they can read the tone of voice, and they can feel that disapproval. And they might start crying just because of those things, the facial expression, the tone of voice, and because you took their bauble away. And I believe in you, dads. You can be tougher than a 5-month-old who sheds a tear or two. That's okay. You can sit there, and if it helps you, you might tell them, I love you. That's okay. I'm training you.
If you're doing this with a kid who's never experienced it before, let's say they're not 6 months old or whatever, they're 2. I have had this experience recently where I was dealing with a cousin and he hadn't had this type of training before. And the physical pain was like, there's no way it actually had zero pain was inflicted.
Yes.
Zero. It was like touching with a finger on the hand. But it was very clear that this is a punishment. And that kid exploded into flaming fury.
I believe
because
it.
He was so mad that he had been punished. And so again, we are absolutely not saying just whoop the snot out of a kid. Not what we're saying. We're saying don't necessarily take your cues from the reaction. Oh gosh, they really got upset there.
That's right.
Done something wrong. You have to use your judgment. But I think it just taught me like, wow, if a kid's used to never being opposed, any opposition is going to make them act as if they were just doused in lamp oil and lit on fire. Because that's what I saw.
And let me just tell you, Dad, if you're getting that reaction and it worries you or makes you feel abashed, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. Please, I beg of you to project forward 15 years for that kid. And I want you to ask yourself, do I want my kid to recoil and squawk every time I put any boundary on them? And you will say to yourself, oh God, don't let that happen to me. Okay.
We were going to cover that at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
That's impossible. So I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out now. There will be a part 2 to this. That's like, what do you do about, like, what are the ramifications of doing and not doing this once you're dealing with 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and 16-year-olds? Because I have some things to say on that future episode.
Fair enough, Mark. We'll do this tool and we'll call it a day. So this yes and no game, Okay. You've got the child is crying, and you do it again as if you just walked up. You don't have any history with this kid or whatever emotional state they're in, and you do it again. This is no. This one is yes. Dollar to a donut, they're going to go back to the no again. Do you know why?
No.
They're sinners.
Oh.
So they're going to go back to the thing that they just got the disapproval for, this shiny thing, and they're learning that the gears are moving, and they're going to do this thing again. They suspect that you're going to disapprove of it, and they do it anyways. Boy, that's just like us, isn't it? And they do it, and you've got to do exactly the same thing. Do it with as little emotion as you can, Dad. Take it away from them. Say calmly, that is a no. And do that little touch somewhere on their arm, the hand. We just do the hand because it's right there. Just touch it. That's a no. And replace. And we're going back to the start again. Now you might have a despairing cry on your hands, which is all is lost. My life is over. I don't know if I can trust this relationship anymore. Everything is horrible. It's been a terrible month of my life. And you're going to get that kind of cry. You might. And if you do, just wait it out. It's okay. I promise you that tears don't kill infants. They'll be all right. Just wait it out. And then just as soon as they kind of calm down a little bit, you can wait it out. And then you say, this one is a no. This one is yes. And whenever you get the touch of the teething ring, whatever it is, I just want you to just show your joy. And you could even say, I'm so proud of you. This is so good. Isn't that fun? That's great. And after they take it out of their hands again, because we're going to do it again. And now that little scenario that I'm talking about, a kid is not got a lot of stamina. So I would say do that thing that I just described for 5 minutes. And then you're done. It doesn't matter whether you end on a high note or a low note. You're done. You can get them out of that chair. They'll be relieved. Let them crawl around, do whatever they got to do. I'm telling you, dads, if you would be faithful to invest 5 minutes a day on this infant, within a week's time, probably less than that, within a week's time, they understand the drill. Because they understand it, I beg of you, dads, don't stop doing it, because I think they understand it now. We can move on. No, I can, by the way, I don't get to move on. I've been trying to follow the Lord for a while now, and I have to go back to the basics that are in Scripture about following Him and obeying Him. And I go, Lord, my heart, we just sang this song, Come Thou Fount. Lord, my heart is prone to wander, prone to leave the God I love, Lord. It's in me. So God, would you keep my heart toward you, make me an obedient child. Keep doing that with them. As they learn it and it becomes fluent to them, you can do it less often, but that ought to be a fun thing that you do with them. And they know, if I touch this, I get cheers from Dad. Maybe he does a funny dance. Maybe he gives me a kiss on the cheek. This is great. I love this game that we do, this yes/no game. And if I touch the thing that Dad says yes, it's always happy. And maybe I'll just wonder, did he forget about the no rule this week? Maybe I'll just try that. And you do the same thing. You might get some tears, but Dad, you're stronger than that kid is. And your stamina is greater than that kid. And your patience is greater than the kid's patience, because you have a vision. And that kid has no vision beyond the next 30 seconds of its life. So you've got to say to yourself, it's worth training my child in how to say no. And I must extrapolate that once you teach them this yes/no thing, that thing has to travel. Now this skill needs to travel. So now the kid's crawling around, and you go with the child over to the plug on the wall, the outlet, and you point at it and you say, this one is a no. And I always just made it a rule that if I was going to do that, I would show them something else that was a yes. So we always, I don't know if this is crazy, but we'd always give like trash magazines and keep them around the house so that the kid can rip them up and play with them and hear all the crinkly sounds. And so I'd throw a magazine in front of them. That one's a yes. Knock yourself out, kid. And if this kid learns this, you can travel to dinner tables that aren't your own, and you go, this, see that fork, that knife, that's a no. See that nugget, that chicken nugget, that one's a yes, etc. You can travel into cars with them. You can take them to other people's houses, and this thing will start to become, it's the basis for growing in child training, which is going to have a lot of other ramifications. But that's tool number one, which is learning how to say no.
I love it.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
is that it? Is that it for this episode? Just the one tool?
I think that's it. I think we're out of time.
Cool. Well, next time we talk child training,
Yeah.
what I want to cover is we did an episode a couple weeks ago called When to Declare Financial Emergency.
Yes.
And we kind of said, if you look up and these things are happening, you're like way too late to declare financial emergency.
Yes.
And so we kind of want to do the same thing, is just give you some cues. Oh, this might be time for training. My kids cannot sit through a meal with friends. They have to scarf their food and jump away from the table.
Yes.
I have bad news for you. If they're 3, they're old enough to actually be a fun part of the table. If you want them to sit with you at a church service and listen carefully, even if they're not really absorbing it,
Yeah.
that can actually be trained too. And the reason that we want to do this, it is really fun to have children who are like portable and can do the things you like to do with you. That's really fun. However,
Yes.
that's not the main goal we have for you. The main goal we have is that you would fulfill your duty
Amen.
as the guy who's supposed to teach kids how to obey, because whether or not they obey you is like, we want them to obey you. The Lord wants them to obey you. But what we really want is for them to learn to say yes to the ultimate authority, which is the creator of all humans. So that's why we're focusing on this. It's really, really important that you do it. And when we do our kind of second part of this, we'll talk about what it looks like if you don't, because I've been seeing that in 16-year-olds lately. And like I said, you might be looking at a 16-year-old going, well, maybe I should train them. And I think they need to be trained, but you're probably not going to be the one to do it at that point. So
Yeah, that's right.
let's do it before then.
Awesome. So we'll come back to this later. I hope you found this nutritious, a good setup. We'll give you other tools, and I'll give you a follow-up on Uncle Joe. How about that?
Yes.
All right. See you next time.